Hello and welcome to the very first video I'm putting online. Maybe one of many if I can keep up the enthusiasm. So this is a build video for a small display cabinet, like you might have already guessed. Here are a few stills you can check out to see if this is something that interests you at all. The main feature is of course the transparent rolling front door, made from 1mm thick PET film. Let me show you the front door in action so that you can see what you're getting into. I'm starting with a few boards of 6.5 and 15mm Baltic birch plywood, which I've already roughly cut to size. The thicker pieces are for the sides and top and bottom. The thinner plywood is for the back and the divider which hides the PET film when the door is rolled up. One of the key elements we have to tackle in this project are the guides for the door. For this I will make a template from a piece of particle board that I can then use to mill the guiding slots. But first let's cut the boards to size. My table saw sled can be used for 45-degree miters as well, though it barely fits for this project. I am doing a quick test fit of the miters and it does seem to be alright. So what you might see here as well is that there is a small step of about 2mm between the sides and the top and bottom pieces. This is in preparation for the aluminum angles to hold the PET film. Let me get a small scrap piece to show you. This is an even-legged 15mm aluminum angle that fits on the edge like this. It will be inset by routing out a rabbet so that it is flush with the side. This angle is the main holding mechanism for the PET film door. I will add some felt on the inside to protect the surface of the PET. The angle is then attached with some screws from the side so that it can be removed in case the door gets damaged or adjusted if the fit is too tight. However, let's now handle one of the simpler parts first. To fit the panel on the back, I will cut a rabbet all around with a table saw. small test fit here. Let's use some tape. Panel, which you won't see, but I'll try to do this as pretty as I can. Anyway, we'll need to make this a tiny bit smaller. This is nice, not so nice. Ooh, this is wobbly. This is the left side of the cabinet. To protect the PT film and have a smooth motion of the front door, we need to put some felt under it as well. To make room for the felt tape, I will cut a 1 cm wide rabbet. The thickness of the felt on this side and the inside of the aluminum angle plus the thickness of the PT film itself gives us a needed depth of around about 3.5 mm. Moving on to the template for the guiding slots. I started out with this template design. The guides need to go all around the inside of the side panels. However, I just realized that this design is not quite optimal. I would have to put it on the outside like this, which is difficult to handle. Instead, I will just round over the corners and use them to guide the router. Those corners got nice and round quickly. I just hope I calculated the right diameter now. So the next step I'm gonna do is to cut the grooves on the outside here using the guiding bushing. Do it slow and precise, hopefully. Can't say I didn't see it sort of coming, but I certainly never had that happen before. Wow. Well, it turns out these small bits for €3 don't like this kind of abuse. This is what we have here now, broken off. Now we'll cut the groove for the in-between back panel, like this, something like this, just with a spiral router bit and a simple wooden guide. Since my basement shop is in a residential area, I cannot always go full throttle with my power tools. So I switch it up by moving hand tool work such as this, simple drilling and such to the evenings or Sundays. The aluminum angle I just prepared and marked already will fit on the edge of the side panels like this. It will then hold down the PT fan door. I will attach it with very small 12mm Torx screws, like these from the sides here. There we have it, nicely center punched. Of course the screw holes need to be properly countersunk. In the past I often had problems with this sort of gummy aluminum alloy that is commonly used for these extruded aluminum profiles. Turns out that watching way too much metalworking on YouTube has its use after all. With increased speed and high feed rate, it machines just fine, even with my chintzy old drill press. Now that I've finished the aluminum angles, I need to mill yet another rabbet, so that they fit on the side panels like this. Moving on back to the side panels, we have to do some preparation. The guides need to be properly cleaned so that I can apply some finish to them. Maybe this is overkill, but the glue on the felt tape I'm going to use holds a lot better when the surface is smooth and has finish on it. A piece of folded sandpaper and a bit of elbow grease should do the trick. With the parts nicely sanded, I can now apply the finish. I start with a small brush for the guides and all the little nooks and crannies, and will then move over to a paint roller. The finish I'm using is just a regular waterbound acrylic coating. Be sure to leave out the miters, since they will be glued later on. The next step is to glue the 6mm felt tape I got from eBay into the guides. So first thing I do is to see how much I will need. With a bit of extra, it's better to have a tiny bit extra than to there like this. From this spot out here around the top like this, I guess. Now comes the fiddly part. Like this. Inside. This. Like this length. So here is goes in that. I will do it like this. I stick it in first and then slowly remove the backing tape. Because otherwise it would be rather difficult to get it in any other way. This is a tight fit, but I've done it before, so I can do it again. Then you can use a sheet of the PT foil that you will use for the sliding door later on and put it inside. Put a bit of pressure on the felt where you already removed the adhesive, the backing tape, like this, so that it sticks to the inside. Cut. the end here so that the PT foil can slide through. Now this open end should not be a problem because the PT foil will never leave this. When it's closed, it is about here, and when it's completely open, it's there. So it will never go over this end. And it's important to position the felt so that the PT foil will never go over the end of it. And one thing to consider also is to round the corners of this PT foil and protect them, round them a bit, because you don't want the sharp edges, the felt of the PT foil messing with the felt. That's good enough. And it goes in there, slides through here, slides through, goes around the corner, like this. Like I said, it will never ever go to this end because it can't. The door is already here. So that's it. During the build I realized that the PET film will need additional support going around the back corner. Otherwise it will bend and can slip out of the guides. This will become clear in just a minute. To make supports with the correct radius, I'm using a circle cutter. To give me 4 evenly sized supports, I cut the plywood with a Japanese handsaw. Now this is the top of the cupboard, and these little strips of wood are important to guide the PET foil. There will be a felt on them, and then the PET foil will be guided like this to the back. Now I could put the PET foil, the felt directly onto this top, but that would be pose another problem. If you look at the sides like this, it would mean that this groove would have to be right at the edge here, and then there would be nothing to hold it. And you could make it smaller a little bit or use thicker felt, but then you would have to buy different rolls of felt. And I thought the best solution is to use these scrap pieces of oak to get some distance to the top, and then put the felt on them. I will just glue and screw them in place right now. I am once again using some finish so that the glue on the felt tape will have better grip. Here you can see the front door handle and the backing plate for it. I prepared both of them off camera, since they are simple enough to make. The 18mm wide felt tape for the top supports is much easier to apply than the smaller one for the sides. Now we can move on to the main assembly. Since I am not using any dowels or screws to properly position the pieces during glue up, I add some supports for clamping everything together. After the glue has cured overnight, I proceed to unclamp the top part of the cabinet. Here I use a small scrap piece of the PET film to make sure it moves smoothly through the guides and along the top supports. Since everything looks okay, I move on to slide in the first back panel, which just hides the PET film when the door is opened. There is no need to glue it in. Some more preparation is required for the glue up of the bottom. I realize now how much time and effort I've spent for the proper alignment. A biscuit jointer would have come in handy here for sure. The plywood has some twist to it, so I just keep on adding clamps until I'm satisfied. Once the glue has cured, all the clamps have got to go again, and I inspect the cabinet thoroughly. I realized that I forgot to make room for the aluminum angles at the bottom corners. However, this is easily fixed with a few swift handsaw strokes. Now it is finally time to go ahead with the key feature of the cabinet, the transparent door. I lay out the 1mm thick PET film in such a way that its curvature from being stored on a roll matches the direction of the door movement. Then I take a nice and heavy straight edge and make the cuts with a regular box cutter. It is best to make several shallow cuts to get through the material. I've put some fine sandpaper in a rounded groove of a little scrap piece. With this contraption I can easily round over the edges and corners of the PET film. This is important because otherwise the sharp edges will catch on the fibers of the protective felt in the guides and destroy it. The next step is to put some felt tape on the aluminum angles. I first give them a good wipe down with mineral spirits to make sure the tape sticks well. Then I put on the tape. It's quite straightforward this time. To test the movement of the door, I have temporarily attached the handle with some clamps. I move it a bit back and forth, and my first impression is good. Then I get a bit worried about the foil bulging and getting scratched on the back panel. But I decide it will work out fine without any further protection, which it eventually did. Nearing the end of the build, I add the aluminum angles to the sides. I make sure not to pull them too far back with the screws to avoid clamping down too hard on the door. Just after the aluminum angles are attached to the few screws, I can't help myself but move the door again to test it. Here you can see the PET film bulging when opening the door. One way to mitigate this would be to stiffen the end of the film with a support. But I decide against it because then you get problems when going around the corners. Either way, the second back panel will keep the film from slipping out of the guides even if it bulges. If you are worried about scratches, you can put some of the felt tape on the second back panel. But keep in mind this will introduce more friction and make the door more difficult to move. PET plastic is quite robust and flexible, like you may know from PET water bottles and such. But with this film I have made the experience that it can also break or shatter, especially at the edges, when you just put a screw through it. Using a nailer with staples is particularly bad. Because of that, I first drilled the holes larger than needed with a brad point wood drill bit and then attached the backer for the handle with screws. I probably went a bit overboard with the number of screws. Now some more finish is needed before we move on to the assembly of the front door. It's the same water-bound acrylic coating I used before. Moving on, I quickly screw on the back panel. Unfortunately, I lost some footage of sliding in the front door, but it is quite simple. Once I had it in place, I took the aluminum angles I prepared before and carefully screwed them on. Be aware not to put them on too tightly, or the door will be difficult to open. I used some of the remaining aluminum angle pieces as brackets for the shelves inside the cabinet. So in order to see if the cupboard design I came up with actually works with this PET foil, and if the diameter of the curvature of the corner is too tight or too loose, I built a small model from scrap material that I found here, and well, this is it. Just to show you a little bit about the process, how I went about getting this project done. You can see there's no felt in the guide rails, and I made it a little bit adjustable to check if to be able to adjust the curvature a little bit and the tightness of the guiding slot, and then just to see if it works. And I realized, yes, this radius of about 2.5–3 centimeters is okay for this material, and it doesn't bulge in quickly or slip out of the rails if I go with the depth of about 1 centimeter of the slots. So this is just a little bit of insight into how I went about starting this. And I also realized that even though this PET foil is, in German it is called Verglasungsfolie, it is available in a little bit wider even. This is about as wide as I would go with this, because it becomes too wobbly. This is still quite hard and usable, but if you go any wider it would become difficult to handle, I guess. I haven't really checked it, but that's what I would approximate from this little model. So that's a little bit of insight in how I went about starting this project. Yeah.